This has been something else, hasn't it? Amazing. Amazing. We've listened to so many stories, people who are changing the world in so many ways, movies and otherwise. Former president. I don't know if you're aware you're in the presence of another celebrity. I'd like you to meet Two-Way, my dog. We drove here 15 hours from Minnesota so that she could be with you for this one, because I knew it mattered, because not only are you here, but we've got people from all over the world listening, and you got to meet this dog. She has an amazing story. She's a rescue dog. I apologize there's not time to tell you her whole story, but she's a rescue dog who had a pretty rough beginning and has a pretty compelling story of presence and resilience. All of which would add up to never dreaming, ever, that a dog like this would be on stage. I figure we've been in front of about 25,000 people at this point. She would have every right to be stealing things from your purses, to be freaking out around people. And those of you who've met her so far have realized that we would only describe her as perhaps freakishly mellow. She is the sweetest being I've ever met. I don't have time, like I said, to tell you the whole story, but I want to tell you my story of finding her. So there was a period of time in my life when I was dogless. Those of you who love dogs know that this is not a happy place. I'm a wilderness guide, and so this was in the spring. I knew that I could not get a dog for the whole summer because I would be out a lot guiding trips. It wouldn't be fair to the dog. So I knew I was looking ahead at a summer of being dogless. Now, typically for me, I don't know about you, but if I'm upset or longing or angsting about something, I tend to go like this and crush myself in and feel worse. And I can't tell you exactly why, but for whatever reason, when it came to imagining a new dog, I made myself hold my hand open every time I felt that feeling and say, wonder if it's going to be a boy or a girl. Wonder if he's going to have ears that stick up or maybe flop over. I just kept doing that, making myself hold my hand open physically with curiosity and with wonder. Not, which is my typical way, going, it has to be a husky, it can't chase cats, and pretty soon my qualifiers become a closed fist. Not so many options from here. In fact, the sense of resistance, right? So I would force my hand open and say things like, even if it's a puppy, it's born by now. My job will be to find her. So that's how my summer went. Finally, we get to September. I finish my guiding season. I go to petfinder.com, which probably many of you know, thousands of dogs looking for homes. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. There she is. I can't explain why, except that I think it had something to do with this. And so arrangements were made, drove to North Dakota to pick her up. A friend came with me. We met halfway, so we met in a parking lot with the foster mom, who opened the car door, let Two-Way out, and Two-Way ran into my arms. My friend who was with me said, all right, this dog was roaming loose for who knows how long. Then she was in a foster home with 5 dogs and 2 cats, and now she's about to climb into a car with 2 strangers. This poor thing. Let's put the seats down in the back, and you can at least be back there with her. So that's what we did. And I was trying to give her space, so I was crushed against one side of the car and let her be against the other side in the back. Within 10 minutes, she had wriggled shoulders and hips across the car and wrapped her paws around me, as I, of course, wrapped my arms around her. And the beginning of this soulmate, sweet connection was born. All I can say is I think it had something to do with this. So what if we turned this open hand toward leadership? What if we approached teams, missions, the people who are watching in high schools with various teams, a chamber of commerce in Saudi Arabia who has volunteer leaders? What if we turned an open hand toward that and said, I wonder what's possible? And try to resist the urge to qualify all the things that would have to happen in order for this, whatever it is, to be possible, the mission, the dream, the way in which we get to change the world. What if we held our hands open and said, I wonder? I call this part of wild leadership. And here's what I mean by wild. Having the courage to bring the gift of all of who you are to all of what you do. Make sense? Having the courage to bring the gift of all of who you are to all of what you do. What that means is you would be showing up as a leader and leading teams who were whole, present, alive, spontaneous, creative, fierce, and joyful. I use those words because everywhere I go, every audience I speak to, every team I work with, I say, when you're feeling wild, what words come to mind? And those are the words. I kid you not. No matter where I speak, from nonprofits to big corporations, those words are spoken over and over again. So I think it speaks to some kind of collective hunger and understanding to live this way, to have a bit more wildness, to be wild at work, if you will. Imagine what that could look like. Now, I don't need to hog two-way the whole time. Typically, I would tell more of her story. I would have a volunteer come up and put a sled dog harness on her, which is lovely parallels about the importance of the fit in what you do. But most of the time, and what I'm going to have her do now, is she goes out and visits people while I talk. So first of all, by a show of hands, if you would welcome her visiting you, would you just raise your hand for a moment? Thought so. I'm sorry, people who are tuned in, I know your hands are raised. I'm sorry. If someone's hand is not raised near you and she's heading for that person, would you please just direct her to you? See how that works? She is particularly drawn to people who wear black. So what you will find outside of the hall after our time together is a whole bag full of these. They look like highlighters. They're not. You're going to love this. A fur remover. So be sure to pick one up if you like afterwards, because she does like to share in many different ways. So what we're going to do is wake her up a little bit, and she will come to whoever is the most enthusiastic in calling her. So do your best to wake her up here. Come on, sweet girl. Who's it going to be? Oh, boy, there's kind of a fight going to break out any minute now. There we go, getting petted. Now, you know the second you stop, she's leaving. Two ways approach to life. Her basic philosophy is pet me, you'll feel better. So that's what she does. If you stop, she will likely move somewhere else. Sorry, this side. It might happen, it might not. Oh boy, we got some competing yelling. All right, well, I think she's pretty settled. If she moves, we'll let her come to you, I promise. So, oh, she's on screen. Let's pause and talk about how cute my dog is. That's my girl. Sweetest being you'll ever meet. And someone, you just never would have guessed, based on roaming loose for all those years. She would have every right to hoover all the buffet tables we've been by. She would have every right to be skittish around people. And yet, if you want an example of presence and resilience in the dog form, which is easily translatable, there you go. So they didn't really ask me here because I had complicated theories about leadership or PowerPoints with lots of models to show you. Most of what I know comes from rivers and from dogs. I've been guiding wilderness trips for 30 years. And so I take what I've learned outside and I bring it inside. So I use a lot of parallels about, say, whitewater canoeing, for example. Or what we're going to do in our time together today is explore the world of sled dogs. Because they really are the best ambassadors of wild that I know. These are joyful beings who love to pull. It's what they want to do. They want to run, they want to pull, they want to go. And so it's a pretty good example of how we might look at leading teams. Because think of a visual for a moment. Think about this. If I'm the musher, means I'm the leader, right, the alpha of the team, I'm standing on the sled. My sled is behind my team. My team is in front, pulling me. I am not in front of them, breaking trail, hauling the dogs along. They're pulling me. How's that for a beautiful, just visual image of leadership, what I would call wild leadership, that requires an open hand and requires all kinds of trust and communication? Think, too, about how we steer the sled. Unlike what you might have seen in Disney, where you have all black dogs and a black sled and a bad guy who's got a black jacket on and a black whip. Not true. They love to run. You don't need to whip anything. They will run. They will pull because they love it. It's been bred into them for centuries. It's a natural instinct. So how we get them to turn left, to turn right, to please don't chase that bunny, is voice commands to another species. Think about that. So it isn't what I say as much as how I say. If I'm driving my team and I say to my lead dog, Scrapper, Scrapper, haw, how do you suppose she would respond? She'd be like, well, she doesn't know. I think I'm going to go this way. As opposed to, Scrapper, haw. And I'm speaking from here. And I'm conveying in my words my trust, my confidence, my belief in her. How we say is as important as a leader as what we say, what we're conveying in terms of the feeling side, the right brain piece that we talked about earlier. We begin to make the parallels because I'll bet if you've been a leader in any capacity, you've given some task or some direction, and they look back at you like, you can't be the same species. There's no recognition whatsoever. So how do we do this? How do we look at these kinds of things? I've had a team of 16 sled dogs for 12 years, and they have taught me so much and continue to do so. So when I speak, depending on the theme, I try to decide which of those dogs, I have 8 who are particular leaders for me in terms of what we can teach. I decide which dog or dogs might be best to tell you about. There was no question with you all today here and you all tuning in, I would like for you to meet Kita. Some of you are going to have to crane your necks. You guys have a front view right there. This is Kita. Cute dog, right? Sweet, red and white, husky of some kind. Let's be clear. World's worst sled dog. He came to us through a rather circuitous route. A friend of mine is a carpenter. She was hired to repair a wheelchair ramp at someone's home. The woman in the wheelchair had been wanting a dog for a long time. Went to the Humane Society, picked out Kita, brought him home, and tied him to her wheelchair. What you're picturing is accurate. He was dragging her all over the house. So my friend said, maybe this isn't the right breed. Let's get you squared away. So she found another dog for the woman in the wheelchair and said, my friend had a 40-acre farm, 2 big black dogs, no big deal to add one more dog to the mix, right? So she brings Kita home. The 3 dogs get along great. They play and play and play. They're running all over the place. Here's the thing. They would get to the edge of the 40-acre farm, and the 2 big black dogs would start to slow down. And Kita is like, well, come on, we're just getting started. Let's go. And he would lead them over hill, over dale, crossing highways, chasing chickens. If you live near a major metropolitan area and you have a dog team, you get phone calls that go something like this. Chris, he seems to really love to run. We're thinking he might make a great addition to your team, and we'd love it if you came and got him today. So we looked at this guy, kind of a hard luck case, clearly a husky mix of some kind. Sweet, sweet, sweet dog. We thought, all right, we can do this. We can do this. So we took Kita home. Now, this is his personality in a nutshell. Okay, he's silly. He's sweet, he's goofy, he's very, very silly. So, all right, here's what we're going to do. If you have an adult husky mix of some kind, they should have that inborn desire to pull. But you can't teach them, you can't explain it or show them. You have to have them just do it, right? So what you do is you hook them up with just a couple maybe older, quieter, mature dogs and just have them do it. There's no other way to do it. So often at first they might get jerked for a second, right? Because they don't know what's coming, and they catch on, they start to run. And most of our training then is about pacing and endurance and learning commands and stuff like that. And once in a while, dogs will get drugged for a second, and they hop up to their feet and they start to run. It's just how it is. So I get Kita hooked up for the first time. I pull what's called the quick release. Here's Kita. He never got up. I stop the sled. I stand him up. I say, oh, you just didn't see it coming. It's okay. Here we go, buddy. Here we go. I go back. I pull the quick release. What do you do with dogs like that? This is not so helpful on a sled dog team. Are you going to make the rounds to a girl? Nope, didn't go far. Didn't go far. Now you're committed. Sorry, but that stretch you're doing, you got to keep going. So Kita finally figured out how to stay on his feet. He also figured out how to run fast enough to not get bumped by the sled, but slow enough to not actually pull anything. I know you know what this feels like. I know you know. The best demonstration, this is a picture of Kita when another dog team is leaving the yard. Understand that every dog left behind right now is howling, yanking on their chains, saying, you should have picked me, I would have pulled for you. And this guy is like, I'm good. I got the sun, I got the straw, I'm good. You all go on ahead, don't worry about me. What do you do with members of your team like this? Coworkers, clients like this. Those of you in the room in HR, this is the kind of guy you're going to hear about, right? Got to get some documenting going on for a dog like this. What do we do in this situation? Be that a whole department that's underperforming, or be that an individual on a team? What do we do? I don't want to feed this guy for the next, 10, 12 years and get this in response. And in my case here, I'm not going to get rid of him. There are times when that works, but I think there's been a lot proven that says if we can retain him, it's better, right? So what are we going to do with this guy? Well, first of all, it turns out he is best friends with the crabbiest dog on my team. Every other dog we try to pen, his name's Mazel, with, they fight, they growl, everybody's all riled up. You put him in there, and they get along great, because he doesn't care. So Mazel, the alpha wannabe dog who will never be alpha, can boss Heeter around. He's like, oh, fine, whatever. And they get along great, and the whole kennel is calmer because of that relationship. That's pretty valuable to me. Here's the other thing. I teach dog sledding. I take people who've never done this before. You come up to northern Minnesota for 4 days. And the first day you go for a ride to get a sense of what's it like, how fast, what are the trails like. But by day 2, with more instruction, you're driving the sled. That's a lot to learn, right? One of the things we teach is harnessing. Now, we used to teach, we'd have you in the cabin with a stuffed animal husky, and it's all stiff. And we teach you how to put the harness on, and then we'll see, look at this. There's a lot of openings. I counted one time. There's 16 different places that tails and noses and paws could get, it looks obvious until you really think about it. It should go like this, but then how does that go on a dog? So we'd have you put it on the stuffed animal husky, and then you'd step outside to a screaming cacophony of 40 sled dogs and say, go harness Gusto. And you're going, okay, how was that again? Kita is the perfect demo dog. Because he doesn't care. You can put it on him, and if you don't get it quite right, you can take it off and fix it and put it on him, and then the next person can take it off and put him on him, and so on and so forth, and he doesn't care. I actually think he kind of likes the pageantry of dog sledding. Any other sled dog, you put a harness on, that means we get to go. If you took it off without them getting to run, they're going to be highly upset. If they had thumbs, they would put them on themselves. They love to run. But because he doesn't care, it's helpful to me. These are 2 things that no other dog on my team can do. Now, had I gotten rid of him and replaced him with another dog who was all heart and could pull, those 2 things on my team would not have been met. And so despite the fact that he will always drive me crazy, I humbly submit to you that Kita is an invaluable member of my team. And maybe it helps to have the perspective of a cute dog, to help us remember that everybody has gifts. Everybody has gifts. And it's worth it to dig. We just heard from Aaron. It's worth it to dig because everybody has gifts, and when we really find them in the sense of an open curiosity, wonder about what could possibly be the gifts in this dog, if we keep this open hand, we're invited into a whole different world of what's possible and different ways that we come together and change the world in our own special way. That may be a huge big movie someday, and it may be just one person's life. Everybody has gifts. And wild leaders see strengths where others might see weakness. So I'm going to guess that everyone in this room and people tuning in, if nothing else, we've been a part of a new team, right? At some point, if it's a high school for the first time, the tryouts happen, the cuts get made, and you've got your team. If you've got a new department, there's restructuring. We've all probably been a part of a new team, right? And you remember that feeling? Maybe you're just in it right now. all that kind of nervous energy. There's a lot of energy going on, right, at a time like that. It might look something like this. There's a lot of energy happening. There's some discussion about when we should get started. There might be some hurt feelings about whether they're being left out. There's a lot of energy. Look familiar at all to you? Kind of a strange similarity to your world? Wild leaders would take that kind of energy and not stifle it. We would harness it and find a way to pull the gifts out of each of those dogs and get them to come together and go the same direction down a trail. And my wish for you, and I'm quite certain all of you have also experienced what it feels like to be in a wild team that might look something like this.
Okay, Jaxie, ha, Sabi, ha, ha. Good boy, Jax. Good boy, Jax. Good girl, son. Good job. Good job.
It can be a joyful thing, can't it? To be a part of, certainly leading a team that's working from their full potential, that comes from an open hand of wild leadership. It can be a joyful thing. All the things you've just heard, my goodness, somebody was talking about, right, from a fire hose to these last 2 days, everything that we're going to walk away with, staggering away with so much inspiration, we barely know what to do with it all, can be summed up with the image of a dog team that is pulling together beautifully. It can be a joyful thing, and everyone here and everyone listening plays their part in making that possible. I appreciate your time and your attention hanging in there with me to the bitter end and exploring holding an open hand towards wild leadership. And I look forward to meeting the people that I haven't met yet out there and in this room and working together to create wild leadership and to inspire teams everywhere so that no dog is left behind. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody. Come here, you. Ready, set?
Ooh.